This is the Know Your Law series by Barefoot Law, a non-profit organization which uses digital innovation and technology to provide free legal information and guidance for all. For more information, visit www.barefootlaw.org.
I'd like to welcome each one of you individually. Today's topic, what we're speaking about, is gender-based violence. I will take the conversation now back to Tina.
When Prima is in the house, you feel so powerful with her around you, because every time you are stuck with cases, it's Prima who I first call, because she's always there. She never tires. And that's the beauty of having like feminists organizing around this area. Now, picking on what Prima was saying, when I say we as a community, women, men, institutions, we need to change our perception of a woman's body, because the genesis of all this is looking at a woman's body as an object of abuse. And that's where all these blaming aspects, not only the police, but even the public, you will find shockingly people seeing a child of 14 years who has been the man in the house, saying that that girl seduced, even forgetting that it's a minor who has been sexually abused. They are blaming that she seduced the 40-year-old or 50-year-old man into sex, and she's been beaten and abused and shamed for what has happened to her. So we need, first of all, to demystify the woman's body and the girl's body, to really truly believe that that person is a human being, regardless of who they are. And they need to be safe at home, in darkness, at work, in whatever place, so that we stop shaming the victim. And when I say this, I want us to see that the whole ecosystem, as Prima was explaining, is very unfriendly to the survivor. I'll use the words survivor and victims interchangeably for the following reasons. When a survivor shows up, or a victim, the first thing is shame and blaming about what was it that you didn't do well. Are you not responsible for this violence? If it's a case of sexual violence, they'll be blaming that survivor or victim for either detoothing the man, dressing in a provocative manner, forgetting that whether you're in a Gomez or a pair of jeans, the rapist is going to pull it off. It has nothing to do with how you're dressed. So with the community, we need to create an enabling environment that helps the survivor to seek for help. Because oftentimes, when the justice system says the survivor has lost interest, the issues of their safety are of critical importance here, because the moment they show up, there's a lot of backlash. So what we do is to enable the community understand that all these forms of violence have been committed against this particular person, and they have multiple needs. First of all, the need for safety, because the violence must stop, and then the need for treating the related effects of the form of violence that has been perpetrated to them. So we enable them understand that if it's a case of sexual violence, for example, the sexual violence comes with a lot of other challenges. It could be, of course, the trauma is there. Then it's going to come with a lot of rejection from people who know her. It comes with a lot of other related infections and maybe even a possible pregnancy that she did not plan. So they need to know that they have to access multiple services, ranging from medical care, if it's also legal, if they want to pursue the legal journey, they also need to collect the evidence that he was talking about. And then they may need to be sheltered and confidence building, because you will not be the same again. A lot has been taken away from you if you've been sexually abused. So you need a lot of reassuring and confidence building for you as a survivor to know that it's not your fault. We need to change the narrative to know that the perpetrator was responsible for their actions and they need to be held accountable. So that's the starting point of creating an enabling environment that allows the survivor to look for help. And therefore, that means the public needs to know where to refer these cases. So first of all, understand and recognize that an offense has been committed other than shaming and blaming the survivor, so that now they support the survivor to be able to go and seek for help. Because oftentimes, even where police has tried, the public will either cover up. If it's the case of like, the journalists who had sex on TV and the whole population was act, of course, the public like that will not give proper evidence. They will silence the victim, if at all it had been a case of abuse. Maybe a case in point that tallies to that. Remember when the MP went to report and the court was progressing, I remember you saw a pastor organizing gangs of men to go and disrupt a court process. And that is what we are speaking about. We need to create an enabling environment that can move forward with their process and changing the narrative towards holding the perpetrators accountable. So if the public can differentiate between the offenses and the kind of services needed is of critical importance. And then knowing the sensitivities of that comes with someone opening up. If it's someone's wife, for example, who has been raped at the workplace, we need, first of all, to understand what is the related risk behind that when she opens up. Is she going to be thrown out by her husband and the in-laws and so on? So what are the confidentiality measures that must be observed strictly to make this person continue with their case without shaming and so on? So all those, we factor that, and then helping this survivor also understand the related risks. I've seen people parade survivors in the media for them to testify about their experiences. Now, that is extremely problematic, because when I show up as a survivor of rape, there's going to be so much stigma to me, because my name is going to become Tina, which one? The one who was raped. Now you see that. And then even my son is going to become Tina's son. Which one? The one whose mother was raped. So it comes with a lot of labeling and stigma and shame. So we need to observe all those, as someone, I think it was Prima or Benny, who was talking about how are we ensuring that there is no harm caused in our attempts to really handle these cases. So what we do is to really work with a network of entities that are providing services ranging from shelters, the police, the justice group, the ones that are providing psychosocial support, to take them through a transformative training that enables them understand these dynamics around GBV. Because GBV is not like a random crime, it's a complex issue that comes with a lot of safety issues. So that now they understand that, for example, if they are providing legal aid, the survivor might need psychosocial support. They need also to refer that person to another entity that provides psychosocial support, and maybe shelter, and another one that provides maybe some income generation activity. So considering the multiple needs of the survivor is extremely important. And then also addressing the backlash that may come up. I remember very recently, there was an MP, a former MP, who was experiencing a lot of violence from her partner. And unfortunately, the case came to the media. There was a lot of sensationalism and a lot of safety-related issues. Now, we as the feminists, we had to come in to publicly speak to address that backlash. Prima was at the forefront. Sorry I keep talking about Prima, because we are always at the front line. And after us pushing back on the backlash, things now became normal to go back through the court system. So the ability for us to push, because that was sending a very wrong message, telling women silently to keep quiet, because if this is an MP who goes to court and there's so much backlash, what is going to happen to an everyday woman if she went to, we call the referral points network that handles different components of the survivors' needs. So we train them and make them know each other, and we agree on the principles of upholding the safety of the survivors, and then also ensuring that we hold the perpetrators accountable, and we work towards helping this person break out of the system, I mean the trap of the cycle of gender-based violence. And that's and we have a referral networks directory that we always refer these survivors to every actor to use. And finally, I hope I've addressed the question, but finally, as I wrap up, one thing that we have to always endeavor is to, even where possible, to walk these survivors through that process of wherever they are trying to seek for services. Because many people, including elite women and men, do not know the court processes.
Thank you so much, Phoebe. Now, a lot of the information that I'm going to give is based on experience. As head of caucus at Barefoot Law, I deal directly with the beneficiaries, and still within the outreach, I'm also within the outreach department where I'm a member. We do a lot of outreaches where we go out and work with these beneficiaries or survivors, in this case of GBV. And a lot of times we have noticed that one of the main non-legal components of our work is family. Yes, charity begins at home. We try and ask our survivors that in the event that you have any kind of issue, the first person that you should start with is a family member who may be able to assist you in this, because you may not have the you may not be able to go there yourself as an individual and be able to report this matter through your own will, but you will always have that person who will push you to tap into some of these avenues that can help you get some help as a victim of gender-based violence, and hence making you a survivor thereafter. We have community. Our communities are full of leaders who may be able to help us have have an upper hand in this fight. We deal a lot with the community leaders. In our outreach work, we go ahead and sensitize community leaders on how to handle some of these GBV cases. Last year, towards the end, we were in Ginger, where we trained local leaders on some of the matters that come to them. How do you handle them? How do you deal with these matters? So community community sensitization is one of our main plays when it comes to ensuring that we help these GBV survivors or victims. We have the church leaders, church or religious leaders, let me put it that way, religious leaders, because we have beyond the church. The religious leaders are also very important. You know how over the years and in our societies, religious leaders are, they play a very big role in ensure, and they create a safe haven for a lot of us when it comes to some of these issues. So when we have the religious leaders as an avenue towards ensuring that the GBV survivors can actually seek justice, we need to also tap into sensitizing them so that they know that when someone approaches you, how do you deal with this? How do you deal with that? Counselors, those two, it's those are also important, and we should also tap into them. Tina mentioned a referral network. I'm proud to be, or we as Barefoot Law, and also I as an individual, I'm proud to be associated with the CEDOV referral network, where we come together as partners and have a referral system where if a beneficiary walks into my office, or if I have an appointment with them and they actually come with a GBV issue, sometimes before you help, we have come to realize, and of course we also offer this training within all our lawyers at Barefoot Law, we have come to realize that sometimes before you help someone with their legal need, you need to help them deal with another need, which might be psychosocial. But if your particular organization is not an expert in that, we are all experts in our fields, it doesn't hurt for you to refer them to a particular organization, or you call them in. I work a lot with Anne from CEDOVIP, where she calls in and she's like, oh, Penny, this person came with this psychosocial, this person has even a greater need when it comes to what they want. For example, at that point, they may need somewhere to stay because they cannot go back given what happened. So after leaving your office, what happens? So sometimes, you need to tap into the mental state of some of our survivors before you can actually go ahead to help them legally. It will not make sense for a woman for you to give her legal information when at the end of the day, what she's thinking about at the back of her mind is where am I going to sleep? What is my child going to eat tonight? So the referral networks that we are creating are some of the non-legal avenues that we are taking as lawyers, and I think it is something that we need to tap into, going beyond the legal, going beyond the laws. We need to make sure that our beneficiaries are comfortable before we can actually make sure that they benefit from the law, and us, the lawyers. Thank you, Phoebe. I hope I've been able to answer your question.
Oh, absolutely. And in record time too. Thanks, Penny, for rushing through those. I also see that there may be some questions in the chat that can be addressed directly. I do see someone asked about, are there any communities that can help protect victims and survivors? And I believe there's shelters, which were mentioned by, I believe it was Tina, Penny, maybe Prima also talked about those, I don't remember, but there was a mention of different shelters and organizations that provide those. What I think we will try to do is to work with CEDOVIP to put up any of the information that they have available that can be open to the public about response mechanisms. For Jonathan, I think one of the things that has come up, which I also highlighted earlier, was the system that you spoke of how you get from the reporting of a crime having been committed to the point of being in court, involved a lot of things that I think are supposed to happen in person, right? And my question is, what are the ways in which a person that has reported a case, or a person that's interested in reporting a case but has been met with resistance or with failures in the system that may be due to the pandemic, due to the lockdown or not, what are the secondary measures available to them? What would such a person do in order to find another alternative, another channel for getting reprieve?
Thank you, Phoebe, and my fellow panelists. To begin with, like I mentioned, GBV is a crime, and crime is a preserve of the state. So ideally, a victim should not be failing to get remedies from state entities. Now, the biggest challenge in practice, I acknowledge, is that there are hurdles, as has been presented, where justice is obstructed and the victims cannot easily access the justice that they deserve. So I want to begin by addressing, because I believe it's important, if one faces hurdles in the formal system, what should they do? Now, before they look for alternatives, I think that the first remedy is within the formal systems themselves. For example, with the police. Police has a hierarchy under which it operates. For example, a case will be handled by an individual person called an investigating officer. But if that person is not doing things right, he has an in charge in the squad or unit where that person falls. So if you experience a hurdle with an individual person, either because of personal challenges or because of corrupt tendencies or incompetence or just inefficiency of either the individual or the system, then you know that you have an opportunity to move from that IO to refer the complaint to the in charge of squad. If the in charge of the unit cannot handle, then the OCCID is at the station. Where the OCCID cannot, there is a regional officer. From a regional officer, there is a director of CID. And even where that falls within the police itself, there are professional bodies like the professional standards unit. It is always welcome that complaints are made to the DPP in the manner and hierarchy that I highlighted in my previous segment. You also know that as the DPP, we have a specialized gender in issue. But where all that fails, apart from our conservative criminal justice system, there can be civil remedies for against perpetrators of gender-based violence. So redress can be got by way of civil litigation for restitution, compensation, orders for rehabilitation, and orders for to ensure non-repetition of the crime. So, but like I said, largely criminal, but it can also be civil or a combination of the two. So I believe that the legal regime that Tina took us through, the constitution and all of these laws that I don't want to repeat because of time, together with other international covenants that Uganda is a party to, that gives rights, guaranteed rights, and remedies in cases of either state breach or individual breaches. Those can form a proper basis to derive a cause of action in civil litigation. Organizations like FIDA, organizations like Center for Domestic Violence, and the rest of the other organizations, that a victim can have recourse to those because they can be some sort of victims' lawyers and they can make things easy. Now, I know that we are running short of time, but Phoebe, there are two questions that I have seen online. Yes, there are delays. What I am aware is that there is a small budget that is given by JEROS to cover medical expenses for examination of victims. But I know as a practitioner that in most cases, the victims are actually required to pay to meet the bills for medical examination of their victims, something that should, under ideal circumstances, be fully covered by the state. So in practice, it happens, and that is one area where we need reform. In fact, that is also similar to the challenges in respect of the lack of a victim protection legal regime. Other countries like Kenya, they are far away several years ago with independent victim protection entities that can address some of the existing challenges. First of all, as practitioners, we always need to know why a state attorney has decided the way they have done. As you are aware, the mandate of the state attorneys is not just to sanction every complaint, GBV related complaint. A state attorney is a lawyer for the public and is under duty to exercise that mandate judiciously, fairly. when you're dealing with complaints, you don't just look at what the victim is saying. You only need to have a critical view of what the alleged perpetrator is saying. You may be aware in practice that in some cases, GBV allegations have been a subject of abuse. It is very easy. It is the easiest allegation to bring against somebody. And I'm not saying that, you know, GBV complainants are liars, but I'm saying that in practice, we have had scenarios where people who are alleged to be victims of gender-based violence actually use it against their enemies in circumstances that can amount to a frame-up. So you need to understand why a state attorney has taken a decision that they have done. But where there is real abuse or real obstruction of justice by a state attorney, we know that the office of the DPP has a system that can check and give redress where that abuse has occurred. For example, in a field station, if a wrong decision has been made by a state attorney, that state attorney has an immediate supervisor called a resident state attorney who has the wrong decision. And where a resident state attorney still fails to satisfy the victim, we have regional offices in all the regions, the geographical regions. Actually, in every high court circuit, you will find a regional officer who is a supervisor of all DPP stations in that place. So where you fail in the field, you have recourse to a regional officer. But even where you fail at the level of a regional officer, you have recourse to the headquarters. So our system is such that nobody can single-handedly frustrate a case. May I also say that it is important for especially practitioners to know the circumstances, the hard and challenging circumstances that prosecutors work under, with all the risks, the cancer of corruption. So working in those circumstances comes along with a lot of challenges. Sometimes it is a misconception. Sometimes it is a rumor. But as practitioners, we should guide our people through, our victims through those steps so that we do not give room. You know, the famous case of Dr. Nyanzi, the DPP for prosecuting. Why was she prosecuted? They always think that she was because of her public nakedness at Makerere University, because that is what made her famous. Far from the truth. Yes, I know that she was charged and prosecuted in an effort to prevent her from subjecting another woman to gender-based violence. So in that case, she was actually a perpetrator of gender-based violence. But most people don't see that behind her prosecution, there was a victim of gender-based violence. So at times it is a misconception, at times it is a lack of information, and at times it is, yes, I agree, some people either through incompetence or corrupt tendencies tend to obstruct justice. But to my colleagues in the civil society organizations, do not relent, because we acknowledge that you really are very helpful in this field, and many times you have helped us to accord justice to our victims by simply letting us know the truth and giving us the details that sometimes are lacking in the police files. So do not get frustrated because an officer has made a decision X which is not favorable. At times it is not because of corruption, It is because of lack of information. It is because of poor investigations. It's because of incompetence. Officers are not at the same level. For example, today I'm not at the same level I were in 2008 when I just joined prosecution. In fact, I don't want to look at the decisions that I made in 2008 because they make me hate myself. But now I believe I'm a better person, and that comes with experience. And many colleagues in practice go through that chain of growth, and so may make mistakes inadvertently. But where somebody makes deliberate mistakes for the reasons I have stated, there is a process that we can take advantage of. Thank you so much. Phoebe.
Thank you, Jonathan.